Every few months, I read another headline. Birth rates have fallen again. Population collapse. Economic disaster. Who will pay for our pensions? Every article reaches roughly the same conclusion. We don't have enough children. But I think there's a more interesting question. What if we're solving yesterday's problem? I'm Jung. I explore topics where technology, biology, economics, and society collide. And today, let's talk about birth rates. Let's first understand why economists are worried. The logic is straightforward. Imagine a country with 100 working adults supporting 30 retirees. Taxes from those workers fund pensions, healthcare, and public services. Now imagine that, over several decades, fewer children are born. Eventually, there are only 60 workers supporting those same 30 retirees, or even more retirees because people are living longer. Each worker has to carry a greater burden. Tax rates increase, economic growth slows, governments accumulate debt. This is not an irrational fear. In today's economy, it is a very real challenge. But notice something. Every step in this argument depends on one hidden assumption, that human labor remains the primary engine of production. That assumption has been true for centuries. But is it still going to be true? Let's look back. 200 years ago, around 80 to 90% of people worked in agriculture. If someone had predicted that only a tiny fraction of the population would eventually produce enough food for everyone, they would probably have been dismissed. Yet that's exactly what happened. Mechanization didn't eliminate food production. It eliminated the need for millions of agricultural workers. The limiting factor shifted from labor to machines, energy, fertilizers, and capital. We rarely think about this because it happened gradually. Now ask yourself a different question. What if AI and robotics do something similar for knowledge work? Not just replacing repetitive tasks, replacing large parts of programming, accounting, legal research, customer support, logistics planning, medical administration, and even scientific analysis. This doesn't mean humans become useless. It means labor may no longer be the bottleneck. This changes the demographic equation completely. For decades, we've measured the health of an economy by asking, how many workers do we have? But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe the question becomes, how much productive capacity do we have? Those are not the same thing. Imagine one engineer supervising thousands of AI systems, one factory manager overseeing fleets of autonomous robots, one doctor supported by AI that handles diagnosis, documentation, scheduling, and routine follow-up. Productivity per worker could increase dramatically. If one person can produce 10 times as much value, a shrinking workforce doesn't necessarily mean a shrinking economy. Now let's add another trend. People are living longer, not just surviving longer, but increasingly staying healthy later into life. Medical advances continue to reduce mortality from cardiovascular disease, cancer, and other age-related conditions. Some researchers even argue that we may eventually reach something called longevity escape velocity. The idea is simple. If medical progress extends healthy life faster than aging takes it away, remaining life expectancy keeps increasing. Whether that happens or not is still debated. But even modest progress creates an interesting problem. Our entire retirement system assumes that people spend maybe 20 years outside the workforce. What happens if healthy life extends to 100 years or more? Does retirement at 65 still make sense? Or do we redefine what a career looks like? Maybe people study at 20, work until 50, take 10 years off, start a second career, become entrepreneurs at 80, teach at 100. The distinction between working and retired starts to dissolve. Now let's combine these ideas. Fewer births, longer lives, higher productivity through AI, automation of physical labor. Suddenly the problem isn't that there aren't enough workers. The problem is that there may not be enough jobs. For decades, we've worried about labor shortages. Within a generation, we may be worrying about labor surpluses. That sounds contradictory, but only because two different trends are happening at the same time. Demographics reduce labor supply, AI reduces labor demand. Those forces move in opposite directions. There's another issue almost nobody talks about. Suppose AI creates extraordinary wealth. Factories produce more than ever. Software writes itself. Medicine becomes dramatically more efficient. Scientific discovery accelerates. GDP continues growing. Does everyone become wealthier? Not necessarily. GDP is not income. The critical question becomes, who owns the productive systems? If the gains from AI belong to a small number of companies and investors, production can rise while inequality rises even faster. Society could produce abundance and still struggle with widespread financial insecurity. That is why conversations about universal basic income have become more common, not because everyone believes people should stop working, but because an economy where machines produce most goods may require new ways of distributing purchasing power. The goal isn't simply reducing poverty, it's making sure there are still customers. So does this mean low birth rates aren't a problem? No. They are a problem under today's institutions. They challenge pension systems, healthcare financing, housing markets, education, regional economies. Countries cannot simply ignore demographic decline. But the bigger mistake is assuming that demographics exist in isolation. They don't. Birth rates interact with AI, with robotics, with longevity, with energy, with productivity, with ownership. When those variables change, the meaning of a fertility rate changes too. The real question isn't whether fertility is below 2.1. The real question is this: what kind of economy will exist by the time today's newborns reach adulthood? If the answer is an economy where human labor is still the primary source of value, then demographic decline is a profound challenge. If the answer is an economy where intelligent machines produce most economic value, then the debate changes completely. Perhaps the biggest risk isn't having too few workers. Perhaps it's building institutions designed for a world where work was the foundation of survival, even after work is no longer the foundation of production. That possibility doesn't prove the future will look this way, but it does suggest something important. Whenever someone says low birth rates will inevitably destroy society, ask one question first. What assumptions about the future of work are hidden inside that sentence? Because if those assumptions change, the conclusion may change with them. If this gave you a new way to think about the future, please like this video and subscribe for more.